Alright, so I wanted to do a video on factoring with a leading coefficient of 1. Now I know what some of you are thinking, because you're thinking, well, this is 2 and therefore is not a leading coefficient of 1, and that is true. So right now our leading coefficient is 2. But always remember, the first step to factoring a quadratic, remember this is a quadratic because this power right here is a 2. The first step to factoring a quadratic is to factor out the greatest common factor. So if we look at 2x squared plus 6x minus 20, is there something that can divide into all three of these? And if you look closely, there is something. 2. So 2 can go into 2, 2 can go into 6 3 times, and 2 can go into negative 20, negative 10 times. So what we're going to do is we're going to factor out that 2. So we're going to take that 2 out. And to get what's going to be inside, we're just going to divide everything by 2. So if I divide that by 2, that by 2, and that by 2, so this cancels, and I'm left with x squared. 6 divided by 2 is 3, and we're just going to bring down that x. And negative 20 divided by 2 is negative 10. So notice I factored out my GCF, or my greatest common factor, and now I have x squared plus 3x minus 10. So now, if we look at what's inside here, the leading coefficient is 1. So that's kind of why I said this is a factorization of a leading coefficient of 1. Because sometimes it may not start off with a leading coefficient of 1, but once you factor out the GCF, it will be. So now let's look at this step here. I'm going to go ahead and change the color, if it'll let me. Let's do this little light blue here. So now we got to look at this. So we've already factored out the GCF, and I want to say something about this 2. This 2 never goes away. We don't want to factor this and forget to put that 2 on the outside. So in our factorization, we're still going to have that 2 here. But now we need to go ahead and draw our 2 sets of parentheses. Because anytime we're factoring a trinomial, we're going to have these 2 sets of parentheses. What goes in the front here is what's going to multiply to give me x squared. Well, the only thing that can multiply to give me x squared is x times x. And then what goes here and here has to multiply to give me negative 10, but add to give me 3. So I'm going to go ahead and on the side here, I'm going to write negative 10. And I'm going to figure out some stuff that multiplies to give me negative 10. So for instance, I know that negative 10 times 1 gives me negative 10. I also know that negative 1 times 10 gives me negative 10. I know, let's see, negative 2 times 5. And I also know negative 5 and positive 2. So these are the only things that really multiply to give me negative 10. And so what I want to figure out is which one of these sets here multiplies to give me negative 10 and adds to give me positive 3. Well, negative 10 and 1 give me negative 9, so that doesn't work. Negative 1 and 10 give me positive 9, so that doesn't work. Negative 2 and 5, well, that gives me 3, so I know this is what I'm going to use. So all I'm going to do is go to this little thing, and because my match is negative 2, 5, I'm going to put negative 2, and I'm going to put positive 5. And that's it. So once you factor out your GCF, so I'm going to go ahead and remind you of the steps. The first step is to factor out your GCF. Okay. So don't forget that. Always, always, always factor out the GCF first. And I'm not going to write the other steps because we went over that before. But always remember to factor out your GCF. Once you do that, then you just follow the steps for factoring out, in this case, a leading coefficient of 1. Today, actually, in class, we're going to try to get to where this leading coefficient is not 1.